Hey guys, welcome back to Maelstrom Gaming Studios. Today we're going to touch on none other than the Tyranid Carnifex, a classic unit for the Tyranid codexes, but one that has fallen out of favor here now in the state of 9th edition. Stick around, we will go through everything about the Tyranid Carnifex and let you know how we think that you could best use them on the battlefield. If you like these sort of datasheet deep dives, please like and subscribe and comment down below what other datasheets would you like us to cover. If we see one that has an excessive amount of thumbs ups, we will absolutely cover it next. With that being said, let's get into the Carnifex. In this video, we are going to cover the Carnifex. We're going to cover the standard basic Carnifex, the Screamer Killers, the Thornbacks, and we'll touch on the Stone Crushers. We will not be touching on Old One Eye. He will be his own separate video later down the line. We'll go through all of their weapon loadouts, which ones we think are worth taking, which ones to avoid, what combinations you should do. We'll touch a little bit on adaptive physiology and stratagems. There's not a ton for it, but we'll still touch on them. We'll go over some of the common builds for the Carnifex. And then towards the end, we'll go how I would play the Carnifex. I still like to use them here and there, but we'll go over how I like to use them. And at the end, we'll go over just a conclusion over everything. And a little bit at the end, we'll give you how we hope they are fixed in 9th edition. Just a little bit of wish listing at the end. If that all sounds good to you, well, let's get into it. So, the Carnifex. It looks at first on paper okay. You know, it says he's 80 points, movement 7, weapon skill, ballistic skill 4, strength 6, which is not great, toughness 7, 8 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 6, and a 3-up save. He's got a couple key built-in special abilities that we will cover. It has living battery ram, so when he charges on a 4+, the enemy unit within 1 inch suffers a mortal wound, and they get a +1 to hit on the same turn that they charged. It's not on a 4+ they get +1 to hit, it's just in addition to them charging, they get +1 to hit. Their Monster's Brood rule is pretty nice, where you can buy these in groups of 3, and then when you deploy them, they all must be placed within 6 inches, and then they move out as their own unit from there on out. Then they have a couple upgrades that you can give them. We'll cover these a little bit more, but just to touch on them now. Chitin Thorns, not great. At the end of the fight phase, roll a d6 for every model. It's on a 6, you do a mortal wound. 5 points. If you got 5 points, maybe, but I'd stay away from them. Enhanced Senses is great for a shooting Carnifex. Give you a 3+ ballistic skill. Spore Cyst is awesome. It gives them a built-in -1 to hit that cannot stack with the Venomthrope's Shrouding Spore, and it also can't stack with the Maelstrom, even though it doesn't say it in here. If you read through all the rules, it cannot stack with the Maelstrom. And lastly, you could give them Tusks for an extra attack on the charge in the fight phase. Alright, so those are kind of the overviews. Again, a Carnifex looks okay, but there's some things like the strength 6 that really hurt it, and only having 4 attacks will, as you'll see in the coming up here, it's going to hurt it as well too. So some other variants of the Carnifex, we should touch on these. We have Screamer Killers, which are your big anti-infantry close combat ones. They are 120 points, and the reason they look so much more expensive because all of their weapons are already included into their profile. So you've got your Screamer Killer. He has a bioplasmic scream, and he's got 2 pairs of monster scything talons. You can also give him Adrenaline's Toxin Sex, and you could give him Spore Cyst. So you can really make these pretty pricey. If you go full loadout, Adrenaline's Toxic Spore Cyst, that's another, 20 points? So 100, you're pushing 140 points on this one model that in the day of a lot of damage 2 and damage 3 isn't going to last that long. Likewise, we have Thornbacks. These are a much more shooty based Carnifex. And they have a little bit more flexibility in what you get. And they come stock with a parasiting talons and 2 devours with brain leech worms. And the chitin thorns, whatever about those. And you can upgrade them a little bit more. The weird thing is you can only upgrade the scything talons with a stranglethorn cannon. Fluff wise, that's the way it is. I would argue the stranglethorn cannon is actually probably one of the weaker weapons you could give to the Carnifex. But you could also upgrade its devours to death spitters with slimer maggots. And again, toxinax, adrenal glands, enhanced senses, spine bakes, and a thresher scythe, which is their tail. I'll say this now and I'll say it again later. These 2 variants I would stay away from unless you really want to play them for more fluff reasons, but you can get a better Carnifex points efficient wise and damage wise out of the basic one. But the key thing about having these 2 loadouts is that you can run 9 of each of these Carnifexes for 18 plus 9 of the basic Carnifexes. So points bearing, you can run 27 of these 3 Carnifexes. But there's one more. We have the Forge World Stone Crusher Carnifex. Now this thing is awesome, but it, like a lot of Forge World, it's a little up in the air about how effective it is. It looks really good on paper, and starting with its base stat line, it's already better than the basic one because it gives you strength 7 base. Awesome. Now, it comes with 2 bioflails, but you could upgrade those bioflails for wrecker claws. A bioflail is +1 strength, AP -1, 2 damage, and it doubles its attacks. Now, a weird but key thing to note here, you have to have the 2 bioflails or the 2 wrecking claws. You don't have to. Yeah, you do. But having 2 bioflails doesn't give you any bonus, which is weird. So if you take the 2 bioflails, then you just gotta kind of have a limp arm that doesn't do anything. Whereas if you take 2 wrecker claws, you get some extra bonuses. So base wrecker claw is strength × 2, AP -3, 3 damage. Sure, great. And if you have 2 of them, each time you make attack, you can reroll the hit roll. So already awesome. And if it's allocated to a vehicle or monster, you get a flat damage of 5. That's great, but you have to pay 20 points on top of a 105 point model in order to get that. So you're looking at 135 points, and you can only take these as a single Carnifex. So he's just a lone guy running around the field. He's no more durable. Even you could argue he's less durable because he cannot take the spore cysts or anything that the other Carnifexes can. I don't know. I wish the wrecker claws are great. I mean, you can 2-shot all transports with that, almost all transports with that. But I don't know about them. I want them to be good, but I don't think they're quite as cool as they could be. Now their Carapace Chitin Ram, that's pretty cool. 4+, you do D3 mortal wounds, or you do D6 mortal wounds when you to a monster or vehicle. So this thing can really tear apart something as big as a Land Raider in one turn. But that's about all they're good for. So yeah. Alright, now we'll touch on the weapon options. Bioplasma, which is different than the Bioplasmic Scream, is an Assault D3, Strength 7, AP -3, 1 damage, blast. It's 10 points. I would say never get it because you're most likely going to be advancing. If you're using a 12-inch range gun, you're going to be advancing with your Carnifex. Now you're hitting on 5s. 4s if you gave them the enhanced senses. D3 shots, you can't shoot in close combat? No, ignore it. Likewise, spine banks, I would ignore. The Bone Mace is interesting, but it's one, you can only do one attack with it. And it is only 5 points, so maybe if you had the 5 points to spare, it wouldn't be the worst thing, but still I'd avoid it. Monstrous Acid Maw, that's cool. That could be good on other Carnifexes, like if you have an all-shooting Carnifex, you could give them an Acid Maw. This is not a bad idea, but again, it's 10 points, so take with that what you will. Now for some of his 2 close combat weapons, he's got the Crushing Claws and the Scything Talons. This, it's rough. So the Crushing Claws are strength times 2, AP minus 3, 3 damage. But you have to subtract 1 because I guess a giant Carnifex doesn't know how to wield his big crab claws. So you subtract 1 to your hit roll. Now you're hitting on 5s, but let's say you charge, so now you're back to 4s. It's still not great on their own. Yes, there are ways like Old One Eye and Prey Sight to get that higher, but as it is, they're not good. However, if you go the other route and do the Scything Talons, you're only strength 6. You're more likely to get more attacks through, and you'll do more damage, but they are really gonna struggle to hurt a tank. And if you really want to use a stratagem like Voracious Appetite to reroll your failed wound rolls, it's only one small model you're using that stratagem on. There's better places to do it. As you can kind of see as I'm going through this, these points are stacking up as to why the Carnifexes are struggling so much right now. And again, his tail, we don't care about that. The ranged weapon options, these are better. So we have the Death Spitters with Slimer Maggots. They say Assault 3, but you got 2 of them, so it's 6 shots. 24-inch range, strength 7, 8 minus 1, 1 damage. Fine, we'll take it. The Devours, I like the Devours more. So 6 shots, so you have 2, so 12 shots at 18-inch range. No AP, but I like the Tactica that you can put in through these guys. Spine Banks, we already touched on them. Stranglethorn Cannon, it's okay. I mean, if you know you're going up against, another Horde army, another Tyranid army, Guard, or maybe a Chaos Horde, Demons, a Stranglethorn Cannon is awesome because now you're hitting +1 to hit, on top of potentially already being Ballistic Skill 3. You're going to get a max 6 shots if you're hitting 10 or more models. And I mean, it's 2 damage, so that's going to do pretty good. Or even if you can find a 10-man Intercessor squad or 10-man Space Marine squad, it'll do great. But I think the best one here, as we'll see now, is the Venom Cannon. It is 20 points. It is a D3 shot, but strength 9, AP minus 2, 3 damage. It's a powerful gun. Yes, you're a little swinging with the D3 shots, and you will most likely be Ballistic Skill 3+, because if you're bringing a shooty Carnifex, I would always bring Enhanced Senses. That being said, let's move into some other ways to kit them out. So adaptive physiologies and stratagems. Overall, I would say to avoid using either of these on your Carnifexes, just because of how inefficient the Carnifex is already for the points you give it. There's just better places to use both your stratagems and your adaptive physiologies. Because even though you can take them in a unit of 3, the adaptive physiology only works on a single Carnifex. But maybe you're playing a small game and you want to have a roided out Carnifex, Murderous Eyes, Dermic Symbiosis, or you could be sneaky and do Synaptic Enhancement and make them a Synapse creature. If you're playing maybe a small Leviathan army, that could be huge, having your Carnifex built in 6-up Feel No Pain and giving out to other bugs. Could be good. Likewise, a 5-up Feel No Pain, not bad. And Murderous Eyes helps fix that strength 6 issue, as well as making his damage just that much larger. Stratagems, likewise, very niche, and I highly recommend not using them unless you have no other better targets and it's in a crucial situation. Most of you guys know Voracious Appetite, reroll failed wound rolls, great. Pathogenic Slime, on a shooty Carnifex, this could actually be pretty good, just because of a lot of damage you can put out. And if you're really desperate to kill something, Adrenaline Surge to fight again. It's a small model, so maybe you got a reason to do it, but you know, take it with what you will. Just, you know, make a note down that, hey, these are stratagems that could come into play. All right, so now we've got the common builds. So first let's go over the mixed build that I like to call, and that is an anti-infantry build. He is, depending on what kind of final upgrades, he's 110 to 125 points. He's anti-infantry because he's only going to be strength 6 with the Scything Talons, and he's only going to be strength 6 with his Brain Leech Worms. I would give him Spore Cyst and Adrenal Glands if you have the points. So really what he's going to be doing, he's going to be going after your intercessors, any of your frontline troops or your opponent's frontline troops. This is what this Carnifex is designed to go after them. Because strength 6 and damage 3 is going to be plenty to get through any intercessor, heavy intercessors now that those are coming out. Great there. The Brain Leech Worms, I say these over other guns because you can shoot them in close combat. And if you need to shoot in close combat, you're probably shooting against, again, lightly armored things. Or if someone's trying to bog you down in a swarm army, it'll help to have 12 shots to help pump out some damage in the shooting phase. Now for a shooting variant of the Carnifex, which I would argue this one might be the most competitive right now, is I would give him Enhanced Senses, and then on top of that, a Heavy Venom Cannon and Devours with Brain Leech Worms. As you guys can tell, I'm much more of a fan of the volume of shots rather than the strength and AP of the shot, just because I figure with the Carnifex, you know, the way the dice work, more volume of shots can really help you kind of weigh those averages to get enough shots out to do damage. So you can swap them out if you prefer the other one, but I will almost always choose Devours with Brain Leech Worms. Likewise, another option for this Carnifex is to do 2 sets of Devours with Brain Leech Worms, a Doc Effects as they're often known, and these guys can pump out 24 shots. Pretty good. At 130 points, hitting on 3s. If you really want to get spicy with them, you could give them Pathogenic Slime, which would give him an AP, or a damage, sorry, of 2. Now, that'll be killing intercessors great, but they're still going to get 3-up saves. So I would stay away from it and just do your damage there. Combat. We have Spore Cyst, Adrenal Glands, and then you can take 2 sets of Scything Talons or the Scything Talons and Crushing Claws. I lean towards the Scything Talons just because it's all more attacks, more damage. They're cheaper. You can run them up the board, and you know, if they die, 115 points isn't the worst to lose. Now, if you're bringing a huge Carnifex swarm, you might want to mix in a couple with dual Scything Talons and a couple with Scything Talon Crushing Claws. Just because if you do come to some tanks, it's nice to have something that is a high enough strength to punch. All right, now that you've seen a rundown of the Carnifexes, their stats, their weapons, and some of the common builds and loadouts, let's go through how I would play with the Tyranid Carnifex right now. So I personally would avoid Screamer Killers and Thornbacks unless you're going for a mass Carnifex horde. I would primarily stick to the standard Carnifex and making them as cheap as possible while still being semi-effective. Really, the only time I would pay more than 120 points for Carnifex is if I'm going the full shooting build with a Heavy Venom Cannon. Other than that, I would keep them as cheap as possible, give them your Enhanced Senses, Spore Cyst, basic weapons, and if you got the points, Adrenal Glands on the shooting or on the combat ones, because +1 to charge is great. So that's how I build them. How I'd play them, There's a couple ways you can do it. So one option, which is kind of sneaky here, because you buy them in a unit of 3, I would try to always bring blocks of 3 for my Carnifexes, if you take this following strategy into mind. So I'd make 2 of them more expensive. So let's say you want to do the shooty ones. 2 of them full 130 point shooty boys. Make another one cheap. Don't give them any upgrades besides maybe give them a venom cannon and then give them scything talons or whatever's the cheapest option there. Or if you really want to get cheap, just give him 2 sets of scything talons and then no other upgrades. The reason you want one of them to be cheap is if you go for while we stand, we fight. The secondary, now with the update that came out in January, it says that if there's a unit that breaks apart and there are, say, in our case, 3 parts to that unit, you have to kill all 3 of them in order to lose the 5 points. So if you have 2 Carnifexes that are, taking the hits and doing the work, and you keep 1 Carnifex behind, well, then that Carnifex can maybe go sit on an objective, be your engage in all fronts dude, just, minding his own business and hiding and protecting those 5 points for you. It's an expensive 5 points, but if you can make sure you're using him more than just hiding in the corner, it might be worth it. It's a nice little strategy. As I said before, I primarily play them as infantry threats. As much as they're supposed to be tank killers, they just struggle too much at consistently killing a tank when they go at it. So I like to focus my builds at going against infantry. They're also, because they're cheap and they're fairly fast, especially if you give them the adrenaline glands, it helps a lot. And you're playing Kraken and things just stack onto them. They're pretty good for scoring objectives too. Engage in all fronts is a great one because you can, send 1 Carnifex off to 1 quadrant and keep the other ones back, or, whatever that is. While we stand, we fight, as I mentioned before, is another good secondary if you want to tech your list into using While We Stand, We Fight. Again, While We Stand, We Fight, how many times I'm going to say that, is one of those secondaries I would almost build a list around, knowing I'm going to bring it more often than not. So I would make sure I have 3 big units that my opponent is going to have to really work on killing. Some other examples would be, your Hive Guard, 3 Carnifexes, a big block of 6 Zoanthropes. Those are some good units because they're durable and or hiding for most of the game. Those are some great ones to pair with a Carnifex block in order to maximize on that While We Stand, We Fight. And a last note, do not expect your Carnifexes to last that long. Having only 8 wounds and the best they can get is a 5 or 6 up ignoring wounds, it only takes a couple heavy bolter shots to drop these things. 4 specifically. Now it'll take a little bit more because they are higher toughness than the strength of a heavy bolter. But things like a Dark Lance now that the Dark Eldar are in full swing, man, they 2-shot you. A Ravager is almost guaranteed to kill a Carnifex every time it shoots. If you know you're going up against Dark Eldar, I would highly recommend staying away from Carnifexes. But that is the state of the Carnifex right now. We'll wrap it up with a little bit of conclusion and then a little bit of talking about how I'd fix them. So the conclusion, the Carnifex is struggling from the old codex syndrome. I didn't mention this too much, but we'll talk about it now because it is important. The whole modifiers capped at +1, -1 hurts the Carnifexes a lot because they used to benefit, you could stack the charge plus Prey Sight plus Old One Eye, and even if you have Crushing Claws, that's still a +2, and now you're hitting on 2s with your Crushing Claws or 2s rerolling 1s with your Scything Talons, and that made up for the fact that they only had 4 or 5 or 6 attacks depending on what you upgraded them with. But so they hurt from that a lot, and until the new codex, I don't see GW rewriting the rules in order to help out the Carnifex as well. So they're really struggling from that +1, -1 to work. As I just said, they are not very durable. Multi-Meltas and Dark Lances are way too common right now, and they are just key at eliminating Carnifexes. We've got Eradicators. They're still common, even though, you know, it's been a little while. They're still very common, and if you take them with the standard Melta rifle, they've got, what, 2 shots on that? That alone could kill a Carnifex, especially if they get in close range. Ooh, Carnifex is donezo there. But it is good to note that their shooting is still fairly powerful if you support it. So take a couple heavy venom cannons and devours and stick them in a Chronos detachment, and you will start to see those Carnifexes work. I didn't mention it on here. If you are going to take close combat Carnifexes, I would always take them in a Kraken detachment. That way you can utilize your falling back and charging and getting as many mortal wounds as possible, because every little damage is helpful for a Carnifex to dish out. With all that being said, I would give the Carnifex a solid C-, which is I think where we ranked them in our tier ranking we did almost 2 months ago. They haven't changed at all. And it's unfortunate because most people that I know love the Carnifex. Their classic lore. When you think of Tyranids, at least for me, you think of, there's like 4 units I think of when I think of Tyranids immediately. That is the Swarmlord / Hive Tyrants. You think of Carnifexes, you think of the Gaunts, and I think of Zoanthropes, because I love Zoanthropes. So with one of those just being so bad as it is right now with the Carnifex, it hurts us. It hurts me. Probably hurts you guys too. So that's it. That's how I would do it. But let's talk a little bit, because this was a relatively quick video. Carnifexes, all in all, they suck, but we're gonna try and have fun with them. How I'd fix them, how I hope, GW, you probably already written the book, you're just being slow at getting them out, understandably. But if you haven't and you're looking for some suggestions, this is what I've got. Strength 7 base. Please, please, please just give them Strength 7. They're supposed to be anti-tank battering rams. That's the rules, living battering ram. Make them Strength 7 in order to compete with a standard vehicle. Please. Give them reduced damage by 1. If you haven't thought about it, a Tyranid Carnifex is basically the same as a Dreadnought for the Space Marines. Not the Redemptors, but the standard Dreadnought, the little box knot, as we like to call them. They're essentially the same thing, just in different codexes. If Carnifexes gained reduced damage by 1, oh, that would be insane. And you might think about, it's not that good, but Heavy Bolters now would be only doing 1 damage. They'd last twice as long against Heavy Bolters. Dark Lances would be doing D3 plus 2, which still is going to hurt, but it's going to maybe take 2. Well, D3 plus 2, so 5, 10. Yeah, they could take 3 Dark Lances if your opponent rolls poorly. So that's, that's what I like. And then lastly, this might be going a little bit over, but I would love them to get weapon skill 3 up if they stick with the modifiers being capped at +1, -1. Weapon skill 3 up would be great. And that's it. That's what I've got for you guys on the Tyranid Carnifex. If you like the deep dive and you want to see other units in the deep dive type of video, please comment them down below. If we find one, again, that has a lot of thumbs up, we will definitely take that one as a next runner-up for these. Please like and subscribe. It means a lot to us here at Maelstrom Gaming Studios. It lets YouTube know that you guys like our videos, and they'll put it out for more people to see. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. It's been great.